Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another Conversations Around the Fire episode on Spirit Reflections, episode 78. My name is Fred Govea. Spirit Reflections is an ongoing series of bilingual conversations in English and Portuguese about people's personal and spiritual journeys, the tools that they found along the way, and how these tools shaped who they are and the work that they do today. We interview artists, philosophers, scientists, and religious people of all traditions to learn how they came into being and the insights that they discovered along the way. If this is your first time here, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Simply type Spirit Reflections on YouTube and you'll find a lotus flower, and that's the symbol of our channel. And you can also find us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and on audio podcast platforms like Spotify. And if you'd like to suggest a topic or a guest for the show, please email us at info@spiritreflections.org. And today's guest is a musician and music therapist, Bessie Barth. Bessie has a very long resume and a beautiful career. I'm going to just read a little bit about it. She's part of the national roster of internships of the Music to Grow On, which is the organization that she started, a beautiful school, which she's going to talk about more for us shortly. And that's affiliated also with the American Music Therapy Association. She provides supervision for students for the University of the Pacific and St. Mary of the Woods College. She also has provided in-services to various groups, including speech therapists, preschool teachers, and parent support groups about the benefits of music therapy. Today's all about music therapy. And in 2007, she completed an advanced training in neurologic music therapy through the Robert Unfecker Academy for Neurologic Music Therapy. So there's a lot of about Bessie, but you can see it at the bottom of the description of this video, which you can see the links for Music to Grow On, Bright Children's International, and other resources that she's going to share. But before we get to all of that, let's learn first about Bessie herself. So Bessie, good evening and welcome.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
So Bessie, take us back to the beginning, how it started, how you got to where you are today.
All right. I grew up in a small town in Woodland, California, and spent a lot of time at my church doing a variety of different things, and really loved being involved in music, but hadn't had much experience. So when I was in second grade, I had asked my parents, hey, I want to take piano lessons. And they said, well, we can't really afford music lessons. And I said, well, I'm gonna take piano lessons. Well, we can't afford piano lessons. So my mom actually ended up sewing clothes for my piano teacher in replacement for lessons. And
Wow.
I finally got my chance to have lessons, which was very exciting. And through being able to have lessons, then I was involved in my church music groups, whether that was the worship group or performing special music performances during the service, that type of thing. As I continued to take lessons, I had a piano teacher ninth grade year who told me about music therapy and said, hey, you have the music background, you love working with kids. Have you ever heard of music therapy? No. So I began to do any research that I could, any research project in school on music therapy. And the more I studied it, the more I knew that was exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to take the skills that I had been given naturally and contribute to my community and to others to make an impact. So proceeded to go into music therapy.
Got it. And so in ninth grade, you have this connection between therapy and music. You were always passionate about music, learning piano from an early age and performing at church and in worship. And at what point did you realize that this is what you wanted to do for the rest of your life?
through high school, I continued to make those research projects, and
Hmm.
every step of the way, it was this is what I wanted to do. So by the time I was 15, it was yes, music therapy was what I wanted to do. Get me through high school so I can get to college so that I can get this degree. So,
Cool. So, Bessie, for those of us that have never heard of music therapy as a specialty, give us a little beginner's guide to it. Where would we start?
First of all, music therapy is the use of music to teach non-musical skills. That's the biggest piece of it. A lot of people will say, "Well, what's the difference between music education and music therapy?"
Right.
Music education, your sole purpose is to learn to play an instrument, to sing, learn all the techniques, and it's that product of being able to perform.
Right.
Whereas music therapy is looking at the process. So is you know we're not looking at having a professional pianist,
Right.
but rather looking at what skills are they learning in the process. Is that working on communication? Is that working on academics? Is it developing emotional expression? There are a variety of things within that. So looking at music as the way to teach those skills, and then fade out that music so that it's not dependent on always having musical prompts within there.
Right. So the music is just a tool that you use to advance these motor, emotional, cognitive skills, right?
Yes.
Got it. And so tell us a little bit more about music to grow on, helping
Music to
individuals of all abilities reach their potential through music.
All right. Music to Grow On was started in 2000. I actually had a woman call me to say, "Hey, my child is number 75 on a list for music therapy. I'm looking for additional therapists to come contract with a, uh, a program. Are you interested?" That was specifically working with children ages 0 to 3, in an early intervention program for individuals with special needs. And that was one area that I really wanted to work in. So I said, "Let me know what um, what that process is."
So
We
her child was on 75th on a waiting list. So how
Yes,
long was that going to take?
it was going to take quite a while.
Wow.
I decided to go ahead and make that jump to offer services through that organization. And that was the beginning of Music to Grow On, working that 0 to 3 age group. And then as those students developed and moved on to school age, then we developed contracts with the various school districts in our area for IEP services, which is individual education plan. And those services are to help them access their education. Music to Grow On has now expanded to work in long-term care facilities, um, working with adults with intellectual disabilities in their care homes, providing private music therapy services, as well as our school district services, whether that's individuals or group settings.
Nice. Beautiful. And so from 0 to 3, how does this intervention through the music actually help? Like how you're able to sort of measure? And we're going to show some videos later on of actual sessions that Bessie does. But I guess in a general way, how do you approach it?
It obviously varies from individual to individual because it is individualized to the specific needs of each child that we work with. But looking
Okay.
at what goal areas they're working on, whether that's we have, especially in that early intervention when we were working in that population, a lot of individuals with speech delays. So when you sing and when you talk, you're using the same muscles, but you're using opposite sides of the brain. So um, helping those synapses to happen. Also, within music, there are musical prompts that if I were to sing E I, you automatically want to sing
Oh,
O from the old McDonald, right? So those, I'm not saying, "All right, Fred, say, oh, but those prompts are automatically built in. Also within music, there's your chorus and your verse, which provides multiple repetitions
Right.
of a skill. So providing those repetitions is a key piece. For individuals with special needs, there have been some research projects done on how many repetitions it requires. And sometimes, in order to master a skill, it takes up to 2,000 repetitions. So if you're providing multiple repetitions in a song multiple times a day, multiple times throughout the week, then those repetitions are going to happen that much more frequently. So that gives one opportunity for developing the communication skills or whatever that other skill may be.
I see. Got it. And so it's not about learning an instrument, rather it's using their voice and perceptions of rhythms and singing of songs that will get there, that will achieve these results, right?
Right. Sometimes we are including instruments because we may be working on fine motor skills, some gross motor skills within some instruments. So maybe we're working on finger isolation. So, utilizing instruments that would require playing a piano to play individual keys is going to help with that finger isolation. Holding a guitar pick, would work on tripod grasp as you're preparing for writing. So there are ways to incorporate instruments into tailor those skills to what we're working on.
Got it. So I guess we could show a couple of sessions that you've done. Can you tell us a little bit about what we're going to see?
Sure. Which one are we going to do first?
You can start whichever one you want.
Let's go ahead and do the coins one.
Okay.
So obviously within our daily life, we're making purchases. We need to help our clients to learn those money skills. Obviously, not many of us actually use money, actual money anymore, but it's still an important skill for our clients to learn. So this actually is teaching the value of the coins as well as their names, and teaching that via a song. So
cool. Let's take a look.
Ready? Penny I know is brown. Nickel is smooth and fine.
Dime
Is small and a.
quarter is big.
These are the coins I know. A penny is worth.
1 cent.
A nickel is worth.
5.
A dime is.
10.
And a quarter is.
25.
25.
Awesome.
all right. So this individual, he learned so well with those, having the lyrics of a song, and then we would fade that out so that we aren't actually singing it. So this was at the beginning of, towards the middle, where we had taught it via the song. He can fill in those blanks. Eventually I can say, how much is a quarter worth? And he can say 25 cents. So
cool. And in those processes, Bessie, have you ever encountered situations where people like their age, for example, the one we just saw, actually begin to like compose or sing and create themselves in the process?
sometimes we see that, especially if we're providing an opportunity for improvisation, that type of thing. This particular individual will start singing in different languages as well, because that is one of his other preferred things to learn. So being able to hear, sometimes he'll answer in Spanish or in French. And so just, another way for them to share their skill set.
Got it. And in these interactions, have you noticed things that led you more to start wonder on sort of the more spiritual or the sort of mystical side of things? Have you ever had that through the music itself or through the interactions with some of these people that you teach, that you service?
Some of our individuals, we have seen an increase in communication,
Okay.
which then can move into, more of emotional expression and those types of things that sometimes we don't see in other places. I have an individual that has worked on expressing her feelings, and we've identified those feelings as she shows those within a session, connecting those with a song, and then giving her the language to express, hey, I'm feeling upset today.
I see.
And so being able to have, and giving her the option to say, hey, I don't want this today, and have that communication, and that autonomy in sessions is really important.
Nice. We interviewed, and I'm going to put a link at the bottom of the video on YouTube. We interviewed Michael Rosato Bennett, who was a director of a documentary film that won the Sundance Audience Choice Award a few years back, called Alive Inside, which takes place in all of these memory care facilities and nursing home places where the elderly patients are in advanced stage dementia and Alzheimer's, and all of a sudden they start playing music, especially music that they were fond of in their childhood years. And all of a sudden, not only do they start remembering again, they start to sing the lyrics, they start to dance, they start to hum the tune, but it seems to have a sort of halo effect that lasts a few minutes after this activity is over, where they'll recall their names, their family, their parents, and then slowly, gradually begins to fade again, and they go back to their normal state. So I was just curious if that's why. I wanted to see what you can comment on that related to the work that you do.
Mm-hmm. Our memory of music is one of the last memories that we lose, and that's why music is so important within memory care, because you can link to some of those past experiences, and then work on some of that getting back into reality type things. We don't work as much with that with the population that we work with, because we're working with younger individuals, and we're working more specifically with their academic and their education, helping them access their education and their communication. But we do see that correlation, that providing them with those opportunities to connect with the music provides those memory cues for them, whether that's to remember to go through the steps to complete their cooking experience, or remembering the steps for their your daily living skills, those types of things as well. So there are ways that we can contribute to those memories.
So it's almost like they have a list of daily chores they have to accomplish on their own, and so if you teach them how to sync through them, maybe there's a better chance that they'll remember it, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I have a student that is currently working on learning 5 different recipes that he's supposed to be able to complete on his own. They're very, very simple, and one of them is to make a quesadilla. So I got the steps from his teacher, who broke down, okay, we're going to do this, and then we're going to do this, and we're going to do this. If you ask him just by following the pictures that the teachers provided, hey, what do you do first? He's not able to tell you. So I asked him what song he wanted to do to help him to remember. He identified Make a Man Out of You from the musical Mulan. And so we adapted the words to that song to be the steps to his making a quesadilla.
Oh, that's
he can sing through the whole entire song, and then when I ask him, hey, what's first, he's able to identify that with that process.
This is the first time I'm hearing that of this methodology, right? Which I think is really cool. You ask the person a song that they already know that they like, and then you just substitute the lyrics out into these directions. That's really cool.
Well, and they're more motivated if it's music that they are selecting. We definitely focus on client preferred music, and making sure also that is an age appropriate. Like, I'm not going to sing Old MacDonald to work on a vocalization with an 18-year-old, but looking at, hey, how about Katy Perry and Roar? There are vocalizations within that are very much appropriate, that you may be targeting that same type of sound, but it is in a much more age appropriate way.
Cool. Speaking of different age groups, John asks, what about emotional management of anger for a 7 or 8-year-old?
This is something we have a number of kids that have some aggression based on anger. A lot of times, what we will do is we will redirect some of that anger into an instrument playing intervention where, hey, let's do some drumming. Then we're getting that sensory input. We're getting a way to express that anger in an appropriate manner, as opposed to lashing out on another individual or being aggressive towards hitting a wall and putting your fist into it. So doing some of that, but then also working on the identifying of those emotions and expressing those emotions in an appropriate way, modeling that within the songs that we're doing. Like the individual that I was talking about earlier, her song for Mad was an adaptation to a song, I'm here to remind you of the mess you left when I got mad. So, you're feeling mad. And so giving them the words to identify those emotions.
Catherine asks, what about CP? What's CP?
Cerebral palsy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we work with a lot of individuals with cerebral palsy, working on fine motor development and being able to manage their fine motor and gross motor skills within our sessions as well.
Cool. I'm trying to think here of a population that I am very fond of and very passionate about. I've done a lot of volunteer playing for veterans and with a group of musicians, and just to see that they go through a lot of PTSD. I wonder what has been your experience, working with that population with music and sort of allowing them to express their feelings and, going through a therapeutic process to somehow work through the emotions that they've experienced, the traumas, in a music therapy like setting. How that's like.
That is something that music therapists work on. Unfortunately, is not an area that I have spent a ton of time. My passion has been more with younger children, but I do know within working with veterans and working with PTSD, there are a lot of song analysis type things. Also working on songwriting to kind of express working through some of that trauma. Also having outlets for veterans. A lot of times having that outlet of instrument play is a great way, and it may be an adaptive lesson type thing where they're actually learning to play an instrument so that they have an outlet that has a positive effect as well.
Right. So it's almost like they're not able to have a conversation with the therapist at some point because they're so sort of closed off because of the trauma. So maybe one way to allow them to express would be maybe write a poem or write a song, or maybe I'll get my guitar, I'll start doing a chord progression here. Do you want to hum along a melody? And maybe we get to your emotions like that, basically,
yes.
right?
Yes.
Cool. Now, I wonder, Bessie, today, 2022, how is music therapy viewed in schools? As I know that you do a lot of work with schools, and I imagine from what you're telling me that it's a very valuable tool, especially for the children that are struggling in other subjects, to then sort of run to you and your team to have those skills developed so that they can go back to the subjects and retain and develop and perform better, right? So I'm wondering where is music therapy in that sense today?
All right. So music therapy has been around since World War II, but within the special education world, Public Law 94-192 was, I believe I'm forgetting my exact dates, but around 1978, I believe, music therapy was listed as what's called a related service when within the IEP, which is the individual education plan. Within that, Music therapy as a related service would provide assistance to individuals who are not making significant progress within their current services. So if a student is receiving speech therapy and physical therapy, but they're not meeting their goals, then music therapy is brought in as an additional resource for those
Hmm.
individuals to look at, hey, how can music therapy support this individual? A lot of times within our assessments, we see that music provides a significant assist in because of the way we're presenting the skill set with music. They're able to recall, or they're able to focus for longer. We're seeing a significant assist within the support of those IEP goals. And so music therapy then is added to the IEP as part of that process. So, as I said, music therapy has been listed for a really long time, but in California, music therapy was not added into actual being able to be provided officially until 2014.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So music therapy has been in some IEPs since early late 1990s, I believe.
Hmm. Hmm.
But it has been through a lot of work from a lot of my fellow colleagues, you know, promoting music therapy and getting into, presenting to the government to make
Yeah.
sure that those services are provided. So,
Tireless champions and trailblazers that are advocating for the
yes,
cause constantly,
yes,
right? So I
yes.
mean, you've seen a lot in pop culture, the notion being romanticized in many films of the struggling public school music teacher, where the funding is always being cut, or they're threatening to cut it next year, and all of the rallying cries of the community to keep that music program alive. Is there
Mhm.
something similar that has been done for music therapy, or in pop culture, or some kind of reference like that that we could appreciate?
Um, there are always ways that we're trying to promote music therapy. Fortunately, with music therapy within the IEP setting, that's federal funding.
Right.
So it's not as easily cut. um, but it's always something that we're always looking at. How can we continue to educate the population on the benefit of it, to make sure that it does not get cut, because for some of our individuals, it is the thing that's helping kind of
Right.
bring everything together.
Okay.
I know that there are, we're looking at funding sources for within hospital settings within music therapy. Music therapy is integral part in hospice as well. And sometimes getting that funding can be a challenge. So always looking at ways to continue to educate our communities on the importance of music therapy.
Right. Because I think that what happens too is that the music education part for learning an instrument or performing can sometimes be perceived as just sort of a leisure or an elective or sort of a extracurricular activity. And from what you're telling me, that I gather, is music therapy does not fulfill that role. It's actually more on the it's even clinical medical front, where individuals that don't necessarily choose it but need it then
Mhm.
are introduced to it, and then they're able to thrive through it, right?
Right. But on that same note, if we don't have the music programs, then how are we going to have future music therapists, right? Um,
Exactly.
so we need the music students that will then go into the music programs, because you need musicians for music therapy. Having both pieces is an important piece.
Right. And so music therapists usually will play an instrument or two and sing. Is that usually the criteria?
So music therapists need to show proficiency in piano, guitar, and voice at a minimum.
Hmm.
Um, Most music therapists have one primary instrument. My primary instrument is piano. Others, their primary instrument may be the bassoon, but they're also having to show that proficiency in being able to play piano, play guitar and be able to sing, because obviously a lot of what I do is I'm teaching via song.
Right.
So you need to be able to carry a melody. Also, a piano is not extremely portable.
Right.
So a guitar, like I said, my primary instrument is piano, but I definitely play more guitar than
Cool.
I do piano. So,
And I think you're definitely tapping into an ancient tradition of humanity, because as we sit around this virtual fire here on this backdrop, the whole idea of this channel was inspired by exactly this image of gathering around at the end of the day on around the fire in nature with the community, and to sing and to laugh and to exchange ideas. And I wonder how many thousands of years humanity was much more auditory driven and learned through oral tradition, by having sacred texts and myths and tales being handed down to the next generation through the spoken word, and who knows, through the sung word, right, which helps to retain the story even more. So it seems to me that we need to have more of that in our core curriculum in our schools, as something that's not just for those that need it, but for those that can have the experience, right?
right. And in connection with that, having that experience as an outlet as well. I know growing up, my mom knew when I was stressed or I was procrastinating, because I'd be at the piano, and she could tell by the way I was playing my emotions. And having those type of outlets to be able to express yourself is definitely important.
I think is what we see a lot, that being emphasized a lot in like Montessori schools or the Rudolf Steiner, the Waldorf method. Is really encouraging those expressive traits in children so that they can really create based on how they're feeling and what they're thinking, right? I want to show another one. So we were talking earlier about anger management and expressing that kind of emotion through drumming. Not necessarily this is a case of that, but there's drumming here in this video. So I wanted to just have you tell us what we're going to see here before I show.
All right, so this individual is working on learning his address. Again, we want to give our clients all of the resources that they need. It is important for an adult being out in the community, if he were to get lost, to be able to say, hey, my address is, if a police officer were to say, hey, who are your parents? What is your address? So this is actually teaching him through rhythm what his address is, and you will see the padding. This is actually one of my therapists on staff, padding the rhythm as that cue. So if you wanted to go ahead and pull that up.
All right, let's see it.
Can you play the drum with me? Repeat after me. 90, 38. Keep her roll over. Okay. Where do you live? Oh, what's your address?
38. Keep over.
Good job.
Beautiful. Yeah, you can see, at first he didn't answer it. As she padded the rhythm, that was that auditory cue of, oh, that's right, that was 1938, so that he could hear that difference and be able to
there's definitely a way that our brain functions in the recall of smell and auditory cues, which is so powerful. I mean, you hear one chord of a song, and depending on how that chord is played, immediately a person will recognize the tune. And same thing with smells and scents and fragrances. It just brings you to so many memories, right? Go ahead, sorry.
I was just going to mention that one of our clients definitely cues into those the melodic cues, to the point that I had to actually change my intervention, because I was actually prompting the repeated response when I wanted a different response. So I had to change my melody to reflect, it was actually teaching time. And you have, I believe, a video on this, but for this student, I taught it via one thing, and then and it was to work on o'clock, and then I was then producing, starting to work on the half hour and the quarter hours, and my musical prompt was the one for o'clock, so he was always answering o'clock. So I then taught him changing it to a different melody, and as soon as I changed the melody, you could see the light bulb go off of, oh, this is a different answer because she's saying it differently. And as soon as I gave him that change of melody, he was able to understand the difference and actually master the skill.
So this is the video we're going to watch next, teaching the different time of the day and the different activities, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's see. Here we go.
4, 5, 6, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 9, 10, 11.
Oops, here we go.
1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4, 5, 6, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 9, 10, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock. We're gonna rock around the clock tonight. When the red hand is past the 6, blue hand points to 30. What time is it? What do you do at 6:30?
It is time to wake up.
It is time to wake up. Very nice job all the way over here, right? Time to wake up at 6:30.
Very cool. So, Bessie, you're based in California. Music to Grow On is expanding to help many individuals from all different abilities and ages to reach their potential through music. And you're definitely in the school areas, and you're taking this work abroad, right? Tell us a little bit about that.
All right. So myself and one of our other therapists, Amy Murakami, developed what's called Bright Children International. And Bright stands for Bringing Resources to Inspire Growth, Healing, and Transformation. And this started by taking music therapy to Bulgaria and China, where we were going into orphanages and showing the potential for individuals with special needs, because in much of the world, individuals with special needs are put in orphanages and not provided a whole lot of services. And so we wanted to highlight that individuals do have quite the potential, and provide training to care providers as well as the community on the benefits of working with individuals with special needs. We started with the music therapy, but then we have expanded that out to be able to take a full entire team. Our largest team was 19 individuals, and that included social work, physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, behaviorists, music therapists.
All in one trip.
All in one trip.
Wow.
And what's the other one that I'm missing? Water therapy, as well as there's one more that and teachers, special education teachers. So coming in, providing training and resources, as well as equipment. We were able to donate Hoyer lifts as well as walkers, that type of thing, to a variety of places. So Bright has been to a number of countries. We've been to Bulgaria, Bosnia, China, Nicaragua, Guatemala, Ecuador, Peru.
Wonderful. Maybe we should go to Brazil next.
Hey, if we have a connection in Brazil, we'd be happy to go. We are working on gathering a team to head back to Ecuador in 2022. We were supposed to go in 2020. So we are hoping that we are able to go this year to return to an orphanage that we went to in 2018 to continue to follow up on the training that we provided, to provide additional training, and to see what impact we can make this time around.
Beautiful. I left a comment here for people to donate. There's a PayPal link on the Bright Children's International website where you can make donations to support their work, and a donation so that they can help people all over the world and children that are in these orphanages to have these skills so that they can develop themselves through music therapy, art therapy, occupational therapy, on all these different fronts that Bessie described, which are really, really beautiful work. John makes here a comment which I really like. We should incorporate music therapy into teaching other academic courses. I would definitely have benefited from learning math through song, since I was so bad at it and I constantly kept failing it. And had I been given a teacher who would take equations and functions and formulas and put them into song, I'm sure I would not be the only one benefiting in class. I'd be getting more A's.
Right. And we do have an opportunity to work on some academics. We work a lot on reading comprehension, which is, obviously a very important skill. And it's a lot more exciting to sing a song, read a song story. We can provide those musical cues to remember the information, and it, provides a different, method of doing things. So definitely, I know. Actually, the student that we just saw, he learned all of his states and capitals via a song, and
Wow.
and you can still to this day ask, name a state, he will be able to tell you the capital, and vice versa. So there are definitely, there's actually a website called songsforteaching.com, which actually has music for a variety of academics based on Common Core that teach a variety of different skills. Some of the songs are maybe not as exciting, but history, science. There are a variety of different songs that are on there.
That's terrific.
So.
Yeah, imagine when teachers can have that creativity and the flexibility in their curriculum and in the school setting, and with all the pressures that they have to also abide by, to have a foreign language being taught through music or math being taught through song. I think there's something there I'd love to explore further. That's really cool. And also, I believe the student that was able to memorize all the 50 capital states through a song is this one here, right?
Yes, it is.
Beautiful. And here you're playing song, and tell me a little bit about this.
So this particular picture was actually a sensory break. He was having a hard time focusing on his academics. So let's get up and let's move around. And then once he was able to get some of that movement out, then he was able to sit back down and focus on his other things.
Yeah, I believe that Plato was the one that said that the ideal balance to be achieved in life is to have a combination of music and gymnastics. Gymnastics for the body, music for the soul. That way you keep both in balance and in harmony. So that does make a lot of sense. I wanted to leave you, Bessie, with some of last remarks. This is a channel that we talk about spirituality, that we talk about people's personal and spiritual journeys, and sort of insights that we gather on the way that have been able to help you do what you do every day better. So sort of some last words about that, and then where people can sort of learn more about music therapy if they're interested in pursuing that also.
Okay. Just some, using music as an outlet is such an important piece of, that's where my downtime is. Having a chance to interact with others within music is another important piece of using music to interact with others, as well as having time to do something that you enjoy. So definitely looking at those things. Also thinking outside the box on how music can be used is a lot of what we're doing. Looking at how a student responds to music and meeting them where they are is so important. So just always looking for those opportunities to throw in music in a different avenue is important. In order to pursue a music therapy degree, you can check out the American Music Therapy Association website, which has a lot of information. There are about 100 different schools in the nation that provide a minimum of a bachelor's of music therapy, but there are also master's and PhD programs. So that's definitely something to look at. And then, Beyond that, there are additional trainings like the neurologic music therapy training through the Unkifer Foundation. Those are definitely some additional pieces that help to tailor our interventions, and looking at how, that one in particular is how our body responds neurologically to music, and how to support the research, that is within music therapy, continuing to expand that and look at that as well.
Got it. So as musicians who are performers, and they go to music school in order to learn a skill on an instrument, or in order to then come into the workforce and perform that instrument as a result, like we were speaking earlier, what are some tools that you could maybe give or advice for those musicians that are out there and maybe want to pivot and maybe want to do a transition into music therapy?
So music therapy, within the education, there are actually what are called equivalency programs. So you can apply, if you have a performance degree, then all you would need to take were those music therapy coursework pieces that you didn't have. But a lot, within a performance major, there are a lot of similarities. The music history, the theory, the ear training, those are all pieces that are within a music therapist training.
Right.
But then the psychology of music, and just how, the specifics of music therapy, and looking at that research within music therapy with children and music therapy with adults, and looking at special education, learning all of those pieces are those additional coursework that would go into play. There's a ton of research that the American Music Therapy Association has done. Journal of Music Therapy, as well as the Music Therapy Perspectives, are both two publications that are research-based, or research journals for music therapy specifically. But then there are also a ton of research articles in music therapy that are not done by the Journal of Music Therapy.
And I guess the last question I'll ask, because that's something I'm very interested in, is regarding the field of like mental health related to like people with depression or with bipolar disorder, or with even risks of committing suicide and things like that. How does music therapy apply to helping those people in those cases?
Very similar, hitting on a little bit of, when we talked about veterans with PTSD, you're looking at, finding, communication of current, where their emotional state is, as well as identifying outlets that are, positive outlets. Again, working on that communication piece of that, whether that's through songwriting, through lyric analysis. I know during my internship, my internship was actually with adolescents in a psychiatric facility, and it was really looking at, okay, let's take music that you're listening to, and what's happening when you're listening to that music.
I see.
And being that back door in, because you're not just going to sit down and talk about, hey, this is what's going on. But if we discuss the emotions within the song that you're listening to, and then identify what your emotions are, and correlating those types of things, then it's a good connection in.
I see. So one of the jobs of the music therapist in that setting is to sort of do a little investigation and find what is on that person's playlist, and then start to sort of add on to that to see if they can eventually start talking about what they're going through themselves, right? And hopefully work through it. Awesome. Well, I learned a lot today, and I'm really grateful that you had the chance to come here, Bessie. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks, everybody, for being here around the fire on Spirit Reflections. This will be available on YouTube in the same link, and also available on audio podcasts. And also consider supporting musictogrowon.net and Bright Children's International, which I hope eventually makes it to Brazil very soon. And if there's anything I can do to help with that, we can talk afterwards. I'd be honored. And Sabrina Jackson has a final comment here. She says, music therapy has been so vital to the growth of the students that receive this service at my school. Awesome, Sabrina. Thank you so much for being here, for sharing it. I'm sure there's tons of testimonials like that. So here's a world of more music therapy, so that we can reach our fullest potential. Bessie, thank you so much again, and I
Thank
hope
you
to
very
see you
much.
soon.
All
Take
right,
care,
thank you.
everybody. Bye-bye.